Hello, everyone. Welcome to INOCON2020, and thank you for joining us today on our panel discussion on sync and music supervision. Today, we will explore the differences and uniqueness between music for films, television, and advertising. I'll be your host. My name is Antoine Rousseau. I'm a graduate student in the Music Business Master Program of Berklee College of Music in Valencia, and I'm also the manager of Disruption Records Sync Department. Today, we have to discuss those topics. Some amazing speakers, great professionals in the industry. First off, Brian Vickers, a music supervisor specialized in television and films with extensive knowledge on trailers. We have Jesper Gadeberg, music supervisor specialized in advertising with multiple award-winning campaigns. And Kerrigan, a great composer that worked on films, television, but also for artists, including Bjork. Thank you guys for being here. To dive directly into it, I would like to get to know each one of you. So let's start in alphabetical order with Brian, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Okay.
Amazing.
Sure. Yeah, that's an easy setup. Hi, my name is Brian Vickers. I am originally from Birmingham, Alabama, here in the States. I got into music when I was about 4 or 5, doing like singing in church, and developed a love for it. Ended up singing in a lot of choirs around town. Eventually, I majored in it in college. I was a vocal performance with jazz studies major. And by the time I got out, I'm trying to figure out, hey, what are we going to do? Moved here to LA, Los Angeles in about 2008. And when I got out here, I first got into sync through an internship with the TV production company. I worked in their music department, was there for a while, ended up going from intern to music coordinator. Eventually, I got a music supervisor credit on a TV show. I was there for 4 years, left, ended up working for a music library for a little bit of time as well. And now I work on the trailer side for Disney. I work at Disney's in-house trailer team called The Hive. And you guys will know some of our work. We worked on Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. We worked on Star Wars, all 3 of the most recent films, 7, 8, and 9, and a ton of other amazing projects. So yeah, glad to be here and share what I can.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Brian. Jesper, do you mind introducing yourself?
Actually, I do mind. Okay. I'm a music supervisor, one-man show specialized in advertising, working on campaigns and for directors and production companies and ad agencies all over the world. My background is I am self-taught, Dolly Parton style. Not to make any comparisons, but my background is that I started. Everything happened when I was 13 in terms of music. Besides getting my first cassette player when I was 6 or something like that. But I started working in record shops when I was 13. I DJ'd and I played in bands. It all started there. But I kept on doing all sorts of things, but while I was doing all sorts of things, including political science, I was connected to record shops, working a little bit to make some money. But I skipped political science because I couldn't really relate to my fellow students in terms of what I was about to become in terms of social aspect. There was just not a connection. But music was obviously what I was missing, so I went back to Copenhagen, and the only way I could get into a record shop was to start to work as an apprentice, which was like half of the salary that I came from. So shortly after, one of my clients, customers, she worked in advertising, she produced commercials, we became girl and boyfriends. Her ex-husband was the creative director of Young and Rubicam, which was one of these ad agencies in Denmark. And all of a sudden, he gave me many names. And so I started up in 97 without having anything to show, and gradually been working my way up, which includes work for directors like Michel Gondry, but in advertising, like Jonathan Glazer in advertising, legendary Tractor, also in advertising, and Martin de Tura and other fine directors in advertising. So I'd taken kind of artsy role in terms of music in advertising. I see music in advertising as small little movie scenes of 60 seconds format. Try to put the right tonality into that. So that's also why I get to work with a lot of good directors and do good campaigns that keep a cinematic approach to them and not really. I try not to commercialize the commercial format even further, basically. I produce, and I also do the negotiations of rights and so forth. Just a little add-on to that.
By the way, Jesper, I did a commercial with Michelle once, which was hilariously and amazing. It was a Chobani commercial over here, and he was directing it. So
that's nice.
Good connection. Small world.
No, I mean, I did one for American Airlines featuring Kevin Spacey, and then I did a recent one with him. It's an honor to work with such talented director.
Right.
I'm very excited to come back to this because, like, about the uniqueness of the industry and especially the advertising. There's a lot of what you said that I think will be very valuable in the questions to come. Kevin, as the composer within the team, would you mind giving us a little bit of insights about you?
Yeah, I feel well out of my depth here with these pros here. I'm just a composer guy. I'm a composer and a music artist, and I suppose it's very hard to describe your own music, which I'm sure your students have the same thing. It's impossible, really. But I suppose it's probably a mixture of all my kind of the people I've worked with over the years and basically learnt from. So people like Brian Eno, Björk, James Newton Howard. So it's become, I suppose it's kind of like soundtrack music. So for kind of work, I do scores for films and sometimes TV and things like that. But the rest of the time I kind of make that kind of music anyway. Just, I suppose, music for the imagination, soundtracks for the imagination. And over the years, a few of those things have been kind of synced on things like that, which I suppose is maybe the connection here. And like these guys, I started young. I kind of, it was kind of weird how I started, actually. There was a fire at my school. I promise I didn't do it. There was a fire, and there's going to be evidence, isn't it? There was a fire in my school music department, and they had to throw away all the instruments. The whole thing burnt down. And there was like a dumpster outside the school with all the burnt instruments in it. And one of these was a piano, like an electric piano. And it was all melted. All the keys were sort of, it looked a bit like a Dali painting with all the kind of melted keys like that. So I said to them, can I have it? Because it's this rubber, they're going to throw it away anyway. And they said, sure, you can have it. It didn't work. And my parents hated me because it stank. Something's been in a fire, it smells horrible. So I made the whole house think. Anyway, I messed around with this thing and got it working. Eventually had this weird looking Dali piano that I as Jesper did, kind of self-taught and just really experimented on this thing and made little pieces of music.
That's really
and
cool.
Of course, 30 odd years later, that's all I've really done with my life, really. And I love it. Like everyone here, I love music. And I think that's probably my answer to all the questions is going to be the same answer. And that's to just be authentic and make the best music you can, because everything else is window dressing. Networking, all this, it's just extra. It's really, Brian's nodding his head that at the end of the day, these guys want good music. That's all they really want. There's not much more to it than that.
It's all about creating emotions for people when they are watching,
genuine,
whether it be the advertising or the TV show or the film. So
it's emotion, and it has to be real. It can't be fake. You can see right through it, can't we? It's music, You can hear fake music straight away. It just
But but there is still some things to take into matter, obviously, because the projects that has got us praise, all of us here, is obviously where our ideas have been understood the whole way through. I mean, in terms of Disney, I'm sure that you run into a bit of politics once in a while. Yeah,
I have no idea what you're talking about. Politics? No,
never. So I mean, like, and that obviously kills good ideas quite often. You know, like you need to take investors who put the money into the projects. They need to make money out of what they put into a film project, right? Whereas in advertising, my clients, of course, sometimes I do forget that I work in advertising, you know, and I mean, like, it's not necessarily art for the client, you know, it's about selling. And what is selling? That is in principle to commercialize yourself maybe a little bit too much. So, I mean, like, so I also have to look inside of myself, telling maybe I'm in the wrong business sometimes. Yeah. Because I'm in advertising. Yeah. So I can't get it the kind of artsy cinematic way that I always try to aim for.
But again, like, it's always about like creating emotion. So I'm pretty sure that like all of your successes came because you managed to find that song, and that's actually a question that I have for later. How to get the right song. But
also, you as a composer, obviously, I mean, like, you have your favorites, and they don't necessarily get sold in.
Oh, you have to. Even on a film, Jesper, even when you're working with a director on a film, which is much easier than advertising in that it's much more creative, the dialogue, but you know, sometimes it's just not right. They don't feel it's right for the scene or that film or whatever. And it's their film. You've at the end of the day, you've got to get, well, I can use that for something else. It's not my gig. It's their
thing. It's not about you, right?
Not about you.
No, you're there to sort of, and they know the movie or the ads. They know it way more than you do. You're an outsider on it. So you've got to kind of respect that. Obviously, there's difficult people sometimes, but by and large, they know what they want more than you do. You know.
Yeah, Kevin, that's a great point. And I'm sure there are some questions, but that's a great point that I actually would lean into, which is I always tell people that when it comes to supervision, or when it comes to sync, or when it comes to making music for any medium, I would say one of the most important tools that you can have is the key, or the ability to be able to collaborate well, because, you know, all of you guys know, you're not always going to get the ideas and the songs that you want to go through, but you have to make it work one way or another. You know, you have to kind of put ego aside and just do what is best, whether that's for, you know, a creative director, or for a client, or, you know, director, or whoever, because there will always be so many, you know, cooks in the kitchen. But collaboration is really one of the biggest tools I would say.
Even outside of music, there's a world at the moment where everyone feels like their opinion is right, and of course there's a chance that we're all wrong. You know, there's that, that humility to say that actually maybe I was wrong about that. Maybe that's, you know, that makes you a better person, and your music is part of that, right?
Oh yeah, certainly.
I'm very excited because you guys have like a very complementary visions and point of view. So that's exactly why I wanted to have this talk with you guys. Regarding the questions that we're going to look through, there's about trends, and we're going to try to not to talk too much about COVID. And we will. But some best practices that you guys might have for us, and of course, lots of personal experiences from you guys, and hopefully some advices for our class of 2020. So I wanted to start, of course, with the trends. Jesper, what do you foresee as like the trends that are coming along in the music supervision world, especially for advertising, and with regards to this pandemic and post-pandemic situation?
I mean, in advertising, I mean, that also goes with, as you said, Brian, I mean, like, we got to put our egos aside. I mean, like, a good solid cover, a good solid interpretation of a known copyright is always in demand. And especially nowadays with COVID, people, most people, as it is always when we live in an insecure time, most people don't want to buy into, they don't want to take too many chances. So that also goes with the choice of music, unfortunately. And I'm saying unfortunately in terms of creativity, because I do believe until the day I die, that if you try and make a difference, that's always going to sell the most tickets at the end of the day, and not try to play it safe. But fact is that most people in the world, whatever they do, but now we're talking about music, that is that they want to copy others. So that means in terms of music and music supervision, I would say if the money is there, most clients, let's say 8 out of 10, for the time being, would choose a known copyright, because that equals a kind of safety, a kind of haven, a kind of warmth, something that people can recognize and that makes people feel comfortable. So COVID is not in favor of music creativity, really, because it makes people want to request what has already been sung a gazillion of times, which is really not my aim in the world of in music supervision. That being said, I shall be the first to acknowledge, also linked to you, Brian, and that is that people, I'm definitely, of course, here to serve. It's not about me, but if I will always try and see if I can influence the process, and that leads to, I will always try and push for the unknown. But fact is, as I see also in the next many months in advertising, that is that, yes, there are music trends out there. And my luck in that context will be if the music budget is not that sexy. But if the music budget is there, the client for sure will go for the known. And that's unfortunate in terms of if you really treasure creativity.
That's very insightful, very interesting. Brian, regarding the trailers, is it something similar to advertising that you're observing?
Yeah, well, yeah, I very much similar to what Jesper just mentioned. I think that, yeah, COVID has changed so many things. And yeah, like you mentioned, there is a tendency to want to lean a little bit more toward what people know, because, yeah, familiarity always will sell. When people know things and they hear things that they're already familiar with, it's easier for them to relate to it. That being said, I know on the trailer side, one thing that I have noticed is there's a greater, it's almost as though there's a slow shift. As you guys know, the joke is always, trailers have the big Brom, the Brom sound has just been dominating literally since Inception came out. Chris Nolan dropped Inception, and next thing you know, you can't watch a trailer without seeing Brahms underneath. But now there seems to be a shift to more of almost a neoclassical sound. Like I know we just finished the trailer for the upcoming Kingsman film, the third installment in that. And we used a version of the song, once again, an old song. It was War Pigs. But if you listen to it, we also incorporated the group that we work with incorporated this neoclassical element where we're using these strings and these aggressive strings, aggressive cellos, and just this very intense instrumentation. And I'm beginning to see that in a lot of places. Like the neoclassical thing is happening. Covers are always going to be big. Covers are always going to be popular. But definitely just depending on where you do it and depending on how you do that cover is really one of the most important things, I would say.
That's very, very I didn't know about this. I definitely understand it as like observing it in the end, and it's very cool to hear that vision. Kevin, as like a composer, is this something like, have you been working on projects lately where you've been asked that kind of arrangement, or did you observe something similar or different?
I don't really do trailers as such, so it's hard to say really. I think the thing is, when you're producing music, it's rather than chasing briefs. Maybe this is advice for the students, rather than sort of chasing, oh, they want this, they want that. going back to the authenticity thing, I said I'd answer in the same way. You're never going to make authentic music that way. So you're almost better off building your own kind of library of stuff that you really mean, and just great music. And then
find your identity
the
as
reality
a
of music is someone will say at some point, can we have a piece of music that's emotional, that builds over three, and you'll have something like that you actually meant. I had an ad, for example, it was for a kitchen company, and they used this huge choir piece that I did, and I didn't write it thinking of a kitchen. I wrote this sort of epic thing, and I was in this big church with this choir, and I was, away in this fantasy world doing my sort of choir piece. And I never had, when I was writing that piece and recording it, a kitchen in mind, but it happened to get placed on something like that, which is the nice thing about sync, is that hopefully we get to create good music that we really feel, and the supers like Brian and Jesper get music that isn't, no offense to library music, but it's not made for that purpose. It's just made as good music, Yeah. Does that make sense? Is that quite a fluffy answer?
No, that was perfect.
Can I add on to that a little bit?
Of course,
as
please.
well? I agree completely, because I think that when it comes to sync, one mistake, honestly, that a lot of people do make is, you're absolutely right. They chase the idea of what is your project, as opposed to here's what I want to make, and let's see if this fits somewhere. And you immediately can tell. I'm sure most supervisors are able to tell, like, wow, they really took a chance with this, and this stood out a lot more. And at the end of the day, the stuff that stands out, it takes whatever the risk may be. And that's the stuff that really just, like Jesper mentioned earlier, like that's the stuff that sticks with you the most, is that willingness to push the envelope a little bit more and to just go for it a little bit more. So yeah, I agree. Library stuff is cool because it's in the budget, and that's great. And there are some libraries that are making great stuff too. So it's not a slight to them, but I always would encourage any composer or anyone to just, do whatever they can to voice however they feel, and push it out there like that.
That's also where the soups comes in that sense that, like, it's also often our vision, like that we bring on board. So, like when you say that it was like for a kitchen ad, like as long as you're authentic in your work, it could be like for anything. And it's just like the soup's job, like to go in and see that, and that justification of whatever genre, as long as it's original, because I'm sure that your piece is original because it came from the heart, and that's also one thing that I will always encourage. I was in a call earlier today for a Dutch summit. And it was a young composer asking, so what's your best advice? And that is, like really to be authentic, and in what you do. Yeah. But like there's also the differentiation of music for whatever we do. And that is also, for example, speaking of libraries, like you can get into the business for creative reasons or for being authentic, but you can also get into this world, like if you smell money, and just think about what kind of music can there be a demand for, and not really care so much about creativity, but care about good production values, and maybe gather 20 known copyrights and gather a great team and have those ones recorded and interpreted. And and then you have kind of like an investment for the next 20 years. And like some of these will be placed over time.
Going on from that statement that you guys did about authenticity and how this defines a great song, that was a question of mine, actually. How do you know when you get the right song, like for a project, or for you, Kevin, when you're very that you compose something and you think it is the right thing?
I never know. I don't know until years later, to be totally honest. I sometimes think the good ones, the bad ones are good and the good ones are bad. So I think it's these guys. That's their ears. We don't know. As artists, we don't know. We just don't know.
I understand. Brian, Jesper, like how would you know?
It's a feeling, like it I always approach music supervision the same way I do as a music fan or, you know, as a creative, you know, in having that side and being, you know, a musician myself. Like, when you hear something that you like, it's undeniable. It's always undeniable. Like, whether it's not about, oh, shoot, this would be great for this project. You hear it first, at least I hear it first, and say, I like this. This is really good. This stands out in some way. Let me bookmark this and we'll see where it can hit. But that's really where it starts. It's just that feeling of, like these guys keep mentioning, how does it make you feel? Does it make you feel very, whatever the emotion is? And the stronger the emotion and the stronger the attachment is to a certain emotion, then the greater it stands out.
Yeah, and to add to that, I completely agree. But I would like to add in that context I mean, like, we do a lot of work indirectly, Brian, upfront in our work, and that is, I mean, like, the more we, as we go through a day and listen to music, I mean, like, we may not necessarily sit with that scene or that specific task or project, or for my part, that specific commercial. But there's just songs you just know they are so unique, they're so great, and they're just within what's also you as a music supervisor, what's my trademark as a creative, what's your trademark as a creative, and what's also expected from the directors and people who knows us so well. That's why they contact us, that's why they want to work with us, because we can just find those songs within where our creative mindset is. And it's just like so fantastic when you just find that one. Though we also find those songs, obviously, that we really believe in, but no one understands. I mean, like, it's also that thing about, you know, like when Jose Gonzalez, he broke there around 10 years ago, was it earlier, with the Sony Bravia ad there with the jumping balls down the streets of San Francisco?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that I would have found the song if I had been engaged to, but I knew of Jose Gonzalez 2 years beforehand, and no one understood him of when I pushed his music to the projects I was working on. And then all of a sudden, somebody
everywhere
finds, and then it becomes a reference to like the next 10 years. Breeze. We want that kind of, like, that's just as Moby's Play album, you know, back then, you know. So I mean, like, yeah, but you know when you found it. But I mean, like, the next task comes along, you need the director to fall in love with, and in my case, I need for the client to also appreciate it.
Yeah. And to Jesper's point as well, like, clients have a habit of, like he said, they have a habit of seeing everything else, saying, let's do what they did. Like, that happens so much. You know, oh, I saw this ad yesterday from 2 years ago. Let's do that. It's a thing. So there's both of those. But yeah, sometimes you just never know what song is going to end up shifting the entire paradigm.
But also one interesting thing to add to that, and that is that most people, they train their eyes indirectly every single day. They watch the news, blah blah blah, and like the eyes gets trained every single day. But it's also common that it's kind of like a known thing about, like, when a marketing director, he gets children. You know, like 9 out of 10 marketing directors, they get children. Then they lose interest in music. It's not that they don't like music, but it's like their music knowledge stops. Yeah. So when you want to push the new forth, they don't understand it. So maybe let's do the next coming. This is not a concrete example. I'm just mentioning that as an example. Let's say Audi would like to show off their new A4 model, the 2021 edition. They may end up with a Prince 1999. And my point is, I mean, like, you would not put a 1999 featured engine in a 2021. I mean, like, you're like, that's also a mission of mine, trying to make clients, like, look into their project, their film, as of create something original for them, musically speaking as well. Yeah. There's so many brands who looks back, and there are so many brands you can clearly hear that their marketing directors, they're in their 50s, because what's get placed in the actual ad, that's an 80s song. Is that of relevance for your student, for the, let's say the university of what we're doing our little speech here for. I mean, like, how many people can relate to really can relate and thinks an original authentic 80s song is really cool. That's something that I also find interesting. I would really like to dig into that survey-wise one day.
Well, I'm very much appreciate like all of those like experiences of yours, because I think it's like really cool for our students, and that's actually what we're going to lean into right now. We have a few minutes left, and I just wanted to have your insights and your thoughts for our class of 2020. Starting with Kevin, we have a whole class of music composers for films, televisions, and video games that will be looking at us. And they are eager to start their journey as composers. I was wondering, for them, as a composer, should they be like in contact with music supervisors, and how should they present their music in the most effective way possible?
I'm sure the guys will have obviously better thoughts on that, being the guys who are being hit with all the pitching. But I found certainly myself that when stuff gets placed, it tends to be a supervisor or a client finds that music and then wants to use it, rather than me sort of pitching it to them. It seems to work that way round. And so I suppose the best advice would be, rather than kind of spending a lot of energy sort of trying to network and pitch stuff outward, focus on making very high quality music and having it out available so that guys like Brian and Jesper can find it, have it released, have it out there. Obviously it's good to have things like socials and things like that, so you can be found online. But I don't know, it might be different for other people, but I find it's a better use of energy actually to just focus on the product and just have it out there so it can be found, rather than spending a lot of time
pushing it.
Yeah,
makes a lot of sense. Brian, I see that you are agreeing on this.
I agree completely. I think that there are so many instances where people will reach out and they'll try to find, oh man, I finally got in touch with this person. But if you don't have anything that person is working on, then you're kind of at an impasse. So I always say, first and foremost, know your strength. It is okay if you don't work on 87 genres of music. One is just fine. If you know that you're very good at one area, then just build that out, work on that. And then once again, I personally believe in collaborating. If you know that someone, if you want to do film composition, but someone who does trailers, that's a conversation that you guys might have, and see what it is that see where you guys have similar interests and how you can create something special. But yeah, I agree completely. I think work on your music first, work on developing your sound. One of my favorite quotes is from Miles Davis. I'm a jazz guy, and he said it takes a long time to learn how to play like yourself. And I think that is that really, I love that quote because it's so real. Like when you develop your sound, then supervisors can come to you and say, I need you to do X, Y, Z. Like the same way composers, like, what you're getting when you get John Williams to score a film, or when you get, any of these guys, Hans, like you name it, what you're getting. So develop your sound, and then I think it'd be a good idea to pursue.
Finally,
and tailor your approach as up-and-coming composers to, if you're into advertising, spend a lot of time on trying to find out who are the players in advertising, find out their styles. For example, me, as I say, when people want to present me their music, I advise them to go in and spend at least 10 minutes, 15 minutes on my website, try and find out what I dig, what I like. And based upon that, try and go back and think, do I have anything of what I create as a musician that goes along in the lines of Jesper? If you don't, that given musician's music universe is probably not anything that I can ever place. But there will be others, who are into a genre that I'm not so much into.
Makes total sense.
As long as you're authentic, as we all agree to, as long as you're original, as long as you try and create your own
voice
and do it and if you have the talent, then,
I really like that statement of yours, guys, about like finding that sound identity and that defines you, and then that will ultimately get you the gig, because you are the one that the supervisors are looking for. And as long as you're authentic, as Kevin said, in your composition, then it will work.
Think of Morricone, right? Ennio Morricone, right?
Man.
I mean, what an original voice, right? I don't think anyone ever came to Ennio Morricone and said, "Oh, we'd like you to make a Hans Zimmer kind of track." I don't think so, right?
Well, I hope not, considering he was much older.
Well, yeah, that would be weird.
How did you brief him, Brian?
How did I say again?
How did you brief Morricone?
Hey man, I mean, you can't grow up and not hear that whistle from Good, Bad, and the Ugly. Like, it's in everything. Like and that's the funny thing that I would also give as advice. Like, look to these guys as inspiration, but also just do the research. Sometimes it's as simple as just watching a film and just listening, like kind of coming out of the storyline, but just listening to what these composers are doing and the nuance that they develop. Because, you know, composers like, Morricone are so great for their nuance. And the funny thing is, you can go back and watch one of his old films and then watch like Hateful Eight, and you still see, oh, that's cool, he did that from that. And I really think that that'll strengthen your tool shed as a composer or as a creator and whatever you're doing.
I also think it's super important as a composer. I personally admire the composers the most who can create a melody that sticks. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's
pop music.
That's
a great skill to have.
Because again, like 9 out of 10 composers, I mean, like they all sound the same. I mean, like overall speaking. Yeah. Because again, leading back to how I started we all want to copy one another, especially now. We want to play it safe.
Guys, this is the end of the time that we for that panel. I really want to take the time to thank you, because it was exciting for me, and I think it's gonna be amazing for all the person that are going to look at that panel. So thank you so much for giving us your insights, and on behalf of Berklee, the whole INOCON team and Disruption Records, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm going to wish you a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Nice meeting you guys.